and move these desks.
That's why it's been opening.
Is it too tight? Okay.
No.
We have 19.
So, so if you could avoid, yeah, her. Do you want me to move her, or do you think she's?
I think she's fine.
Okay, all right.
Alright, so third period, the only thing you need with you is your lump of lead.
Oh shoot. Oh shoot.
So go get that now before we start, and then it's,
So we don't need that.
you need the horn book and the lump of lead. Caleb, lunch pail is not with you, water bottle is not with you. Once we get started. Caleb, water bottle is not with
Nope.
us.
Water bottle's out there.
This is like a church.
We all set. Wow. Well. All right. Oh, one more. Okay. My name is Mrs. Payne, and I am the curator for the North Attleboro Historical Society. And it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Little Red Schoolhouse, which was built in 1854 in the Adamsdale section of town. That's down by May Street, you know, where Pizzeria Uno's is, down that way. And then it was a one-room schoolhouse, so all the different classes had their lessons here. And then after about 100 years, they didn't need any school. They didn't need the school anymore because Allen Avenue School took over for the area, and this building was sold to the North Attleboro Historical Society, and we moved it right here, right next to the Garrison House. So, like, you all look very, very handsome, very beautiful. It's nice to see you, and I will see you at the Garrison House at 10:15. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Alright, so we are about to get started. You may take your mask off now that it's just us in the room. Maybe put it on your sleeve. Like, I might just keep mine on my wrist because we are going to need it again for our tour. So maybe just put it on your wrist so that you don't lose it. Yes, if you have a pocket, you put it in a pocket. I would say maybe just right to the side. So, like I said, we're about to begin. So this is just your friendly reminder before we get started. Teachers were very strict in colonial times. Students were held to very different expectations in colonial times. We were always sitting up in cursive posture. We have two hands in front of us folded on our seats. We use our manners, so when a teacher calls on you, you'll stand, you'll say, yes, ma'am, you'll do your curtsy or your bow, and you'll give your answer. If students did not follow expectations or use their manners, they were punished. For example, they may have been sent to the dunce chair. So, those expectations are going to start as soon as we ring the bell, because that will start the school day. Ella, do you have a question before we start?
Yes. Ignore our mask. Underneath our desks, there's a little area where you can put your mask.
Oh, thank you, Ella. That's very helpful. If you would like to keep your mask here. Penny?
Can you put your marker over there too?
Sure. All right.
This is a church.
All right. So we are going to start the school day with roll call. So when I call your name, you will answer with present. So for example, I will say, Miss Charlotte Sharrock. She will stand up, she will do her curtsy, and she does not have to say yes ma'am, she will just say present. Understand?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll start with Charlotte. Miss Charlotte Sharrock.
Present.
Miss Melody Bailey.
Present.
Miss Yara Haydar,
Present.
Miss Brooklyn Austin, Miss Penny Corey,
Present.
Miss Esme Proctor,
Present.
Miss Avery Fairley,
Present.
Miss Angelica Arroyo Bond,
Present.
Miss Ella Poirier,
Present.
Miss Michaela Valier,
Present.
Mr. Lucas Moran,
Present.
Mr. Tommy Wills, Mr. Bryce Rosado,
Present.
Mr. Richie Desolance,
Present.
Mr. Logan Hall,
Present.
Mr. Tanab Penaparetti,
Present.
Mr. Lucas Nardone,
Present.
Mr. Luke Campbell,
Present.
and Mr. Caleb Caesar. Excellent. Thank you guys. So, as we talked about yesterday, we are in a one-room schoolhouse, so that has every student in the school. We are lucky today because it is just third grade, but in colonial times, there will be students in this classroom ranging from kindergarten all the way through high school. So the teacher would teach one group of students at a time. Students would have to do a lot of independent work. Older students might have had to help younger students, and then throughout the day, the teacher would have worked with students at different grade levels. But today, we're with our third grade class, so it is just third grade. So Miss Gay is going to start us off with a reading lesson. So can everyone please take out their horn book?
So our first lesson we're going to do is a reading lesson. So to practice our reading today, we are going to recite the alphabet. So back in colonial, so that's what we're going to. So who would like to practice? So when I call on you, you are going to stand to recite the alphabet. Richie?
Yes, ma'am. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Great job, Richie. Nice and eloquently read, just like we practiced.
Would anyone else like to practice? Penny?
Yes, ma'am. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Good job, very nice, Penny. Another boy that would like to practice? Bryce?
Yes, ma'am. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Very nice, Bryce. Another girl that would like to practice? Michaela?
Yes, ma'am. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z.
Very nice, Michaela. All right, so now another thing that they did in colonial times was they learned how to recite the alphabet backwards. So that is what we are going to do now. Now, girls, you may use your horn books to recite the alphabet backwards. Boys, I'm going to ask you to put your horn books away.
Melody, I'm going to have you head over to the booth chair.
So girls, you can start looking over the alphabet. to practice reciting it backwards. Boys, you can take some moments to try to learn the alphabet backwards just from memory, okay? So I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. Yes, Ella? Yeah, do you want me to help you? Are there any girls that would like to try to say the alphabet backwards? And remember, you can use your corn books. Yara?
Yes, ma'am. D Y X W V U T S R Q P O N N L K J I H G F E T C B A.
Very nice, Yara. Are there any boys that think they are ready to try? Logan, you want to give it a try?
Yes, ma'am. And also a question, will we be sent to Dunster if we get it wrong?
Last
No.
time.
Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, P, O, N, M, L.
All right, you can stop right there, Logan.
Thank you.
Are there any girls that would like to go? Angelica?
Yes,
So please stand and do it, Angelica.
Actually, that's going to be right to the Dutch chair because we need to use our manners. You got to stand when a teacher calls on you. Come on over.
Are there any other girls that would like to try? Esme, you want to try?
Yes, ma'am. Z Y X W V U T S R Q P O N M L K J I H G E F E D C B A.
Are there any other boys that would like to try? Luke, you want to try?
Yes, ma'am. Z, Y, X, W, V, U,
All right, thank you, Luke. Nice try. Good job, boys. That's not easy to do. All right, boys, I'm going to give you, now, boys, you can take out your horn books. And now you can practice using the horn books. Girls, you are going to work on some stitching. So boys, continue to work on memorizing the alphabet backwards, but this time you can use your horn books. And I'll check in with you in a few minutes.
Charlotte.
yes, ma'am. Can you take this out or that in?
You can leave that out, yeah. Your name should be on the back of it. They already started. Or they didn't start. I have use your lump of lead to practice the stitching today.
Yes, Michaela.
Yes, ma'am. Can I pick up this? I got 2 sheets.
Flip them over. This one. Ready?
May I please have a lump of lead for me and my friend Caroline?
And so you can speak for yourself. I'll let you do that.
Can I please have a lump of lead?
I can bring any extra lumps of lead. Mrs. Bell, did you bring any extra lumps of lead?
Including time students had to be prepared for themselves. Charlie, did you have a question?
Have a seat, Holly. Miss Bryce.
Miss Mary,
Can I please have a lump of lead?
are we gonna have to memorize the alphabet?
I will not forget. Come on.
Yep, so that's
over.
what we should be working on
We
now.
do not have
This
a
time you
chance.
can use your board books. Yes, Luke?
Yes, ma'am. Is it okay if I pick up my pencil now?
Yes, of course.
Okay, that's fine.
Bobby?
Is it okay if you drop my pencil?
Yes, that's fine. Just be careful when you're moving around in case the thing moves. All right, boys, is there anyone that would like to try, now that they've had more time to practice
So
with
you're
their
gonna write
form
your
book?
message? I will not
Now,
forget.
if I pick you, you'll have to flip over your form book. We can't use it. Caleb, you want to give it a try?
Yes, ma'am.
ZYXWBU TR
Nice try, Caleb. Bryce, you want to give it a try? All right, flip over your horn book.
ZYXWBUTSRQBONL I.
Nice try, Bryce. Bryce, you did a very nice job, though. Good job. Almost got it. All right, is there one more boy that wants to try? Lucas, you want to try?
Yes.
You can step off to the side if you want, that way you're not.
ZY
Nice try, Lucas. All right.
All right, we are going to switch over to handwriting. So if you are working on your stitching, please fold that up, put it inside of your desk. Everyone, please take your horn books back out. So in colonial times, handwriting was extremely important. Penmanship had to be very precise, and we always wrote in cursive. So today we're going to be practicing our handwriting or our penmanship. We need to have neat, small letters. They need to be evenly spaced out, and you should take your time writing each letter. Now, we have not learned every cursive letter yet, so we are going to be writing in cursive every uppercase letter and every lowercase letter. However, if we get to an uppercase letter that you do not know, please just write it in your regular, neatest third grade handwriting, okay? Now, we are going to be practicing our penmanship on a slate. In colonial times, every student would have their own slate. It was usually a hand-me-down from an older sibling, or a cousin, or a parent, and you would bring your slate to school every day. The slate is similar to how we use whiteboards now, but it was a little chalkboard. So right now, we are going to have slates being passed out. You will have a slate, a piece of chalk, and a rag. Your expectation when you receive the slate is to write the whole alphabet. You're going to do uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, lowercase. So for example, we do not know the uppercase Z yet, so we would write a Z, and then we would write a lowercase z next to it. We know the uppercase Y, then we would do a lowercase y next to it. Do you notice how I'm starting with the end of the alphabet? We are going to start with Z and work our way back to A. So you are writing the alphabet backwards on your slate in your neatest possible handwriting. If we do not have the uppercase letter yet, you're going to write it in regular handwriting. And if we do have it, you will write it in cursive handwriting. Okay, I'm going to have you put your hands down right now. When you get your slate, you can begin working, and you can use your horn book to help you. So we're writing the alphabet backwards. We're starting with Z. We are using our neatest possible penmanship. If we do not have the uppercase letter yet, write it in regular handwriting. If you do have it, use cursive. Take your time. Evenly spaced letters. If it is not neat, there will be touch. You can get started. If this is about the Y, I'm not sure if we have the Y or not.
Grab your strings
Penny?
and go behind Penny and Esme.
Lucas?
Yes, Ricky and Grace, just be careful of rocking the bench because your bench is attached to Logan and Tanar's desk, okay?
Is it okay if I get a piece of chalk that's a little bigger?
That's going to be the wrong thing. So back in colonial times, you had to use what you got, all right?
Okay.
They had to make do with hand-me-downs. Get what you get. If you are not sure if we have the uppercase letter or not, just do it in regular handwriting. Okay. Good job. They were hand-me-downs, so you have to be careful with them, okay? Gotta do the best with what you got.
Charlotte? Does that seem better?
You can use your horn books to help you if you need it for the order.
It's okay if I use a long one.
Reggie?
Did we do the cursive letters?
If you're not sure, just use your right hand.
I could have
Charlotte? Melody?
May I also be mistaken? You're gonna next. Yes, ma'am. What if we know how to do cursive letters? Like after this cursive letter, but we haven't learned it yet?
Then do it in pen, please.
All right, Logan, I'm going to send you to the next chair because I stated that direction quite a few times. Come on over.
Okay, Sam?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, so you're gonna go with I will listen
Just
two
want to have to
directions.
finish the
Okay.
You know why?
So we can go.
Because our direction was to write the alphabet backwards. So erase that. When Logan's done, I will send you. But while you're waiting, you're going to have to start all over again. Nope, so the Z should be right up there.
So he didn't start, he did it backwards though. So he started with the Z and he went backwards. Because I watched him, so I was looking for someone to.
Well, restart anyway.
Wait, what do I still do?
Would you want to go?
Oh.
Okay, just start the Z right up there.
I did this in the I said it at the
Yeah,
bottom.
you're okay.
Just trying to get
Well, that's only the first thing I look for. That's interesting. Yeah. All right, we will be working on handwriting for about 4 more minutes. If you finish the whole alphabet in the next 4 minutes, you can flip your slate over and you can start again. All right? About 4 more minutes. If you finish in that time, you can flip your slate over and you will just start again. Bryce?
Yes, ma'am.
If we do not finish.
If you're not finished, sorry. arithmetic. Does anybody know what arithmetic is compared to what we call it today in school? So if I say we're going to start working on the subject of arithmetic, bless you, what subject would that be today? Lucas?
Yes, ma'am. Math.
You are absolutely correct. So we are going to listen to some word problems. Now they might sound a little bit funny. The way that things were worded was a little different in colonial times. I will read the word problem and you will solve it on your slate. You need to show your work. When you have found your answer, just give me a quiet thumbs up. All right. You give 13 cents for a spelling book and 3 for an inkstand. How much do they come to? How many are 13 and 3? I'll read it one more time. You give 13 cents for a spelling book and 3 for an inkstand. How much do they come to? How many are 13 and 3? You may solve on your slates now. Ella?
Yes, ma'am. Would that be like 13 plus 3?
Logan?
Yes, ma'am. Do you want me to with my hat when I...
I'll look right next to Caleb. Tanara? Yes, please put the unit. Richie?
Yes, ma'am. Would we write it on 13 plus 3?
Bryce?
Yes, ma'am.
When are you home or done? All right, Bryce, I'm going to send you to the bench chair because I did give a direction. So when you finish, we're giving a quiet thumbs up on our class. Ready?
Yes, ma'am. So will we draw pictures of it?
You can do whatever you need to do to
Alright, so I can tell that Yara, Ela, Ella, and you have solved. I love how I see units on Angelica and Avery's slate, and Lucas's slate. Logan?
Yes, ma'am. If there was a bathroom, would we have a 1 or would we just get a bathroom?
I would understand either, so up to you. You need to use the bathroom. Alright, can I have somebody please now raise their hand to tell me the answer to that first question? Caleb?
Yes, ma'am. 16.
16, and what are we missing at the end?
Cents.
Cents. Can you show me your work? Very nice job. So we did 13 plus 3 equals 16 cents. You may erase your dates. We have time for maybe one more. Yeah.
All right, our next arithmetic problem is, if you should lose one finger from one hand, how many would you have left on that hand? How many is 4 less 1? I will read it again. If you should lose one finger from one hand, how many would you have left on that hand? How many is 4 less 1? You may solve it on your board.
So I think the way they worded that, they are just counting your 4 fingers, they are not including your thumb. 4 less 1. But now you put your hands down, and I want you to try and figure that out on your own, okay? Quiet thumbs up when you've solved it. I'm gonna have you put your hands down, I want you to try and solve it on your own. I'm gonna have you put your hands down, I'm gonna have you try to solve it on your own. You have to listen very closely to the wording on that one. I like how Lucas is drawing a picture to show his work. I like how Avery and Angelica have labeled their answer. Like the number model that I see from Charlotte and Brooklyn. Alright, where are we going? One over.
All right, who would like to share their answer? Charlotte? Can you show me your work, please? Very well. All right, you may erase your boards. We will do one more. All right, our next arithmetic problem. General Washington was born in 1732 and died in 1799. How old was he? So General Washington was born in 1732 and died in 1799. How old was he? This is a little tricky.
Can somebody tell me 1799 in expanded form? 1799 expanded form. Richie.
Yes, ma'am. 1,000 plus 700 plus 90 plus 9.
Can somebody please tell me 1732 in expanded form? Tell me.
Yes, ma'am. 1,000 plus 700 plus 30 plus 0.
Thank you. All right. Somebody raise your hand and tell me, will I start in the thousands, the hundreds, the tens, or the ones? Where will I start? Lucas and
Yes, ma'am. Always start at the 1.
always start at the ones. Absolutely. So what is 9 minus 2? Somebody tell me 9 minus 2. I love how I see students following along on their slates. What is 9 minus 2? Lucas and
Yes, ma'am. 7.
9 minus 2 is 7. All right. Can I do 90 minus 30? What's 90 minus 30? Caleb?
Yes. 9
90 minus 30 is 60.
60. I'm going to have you guys finish solving on your own on your slate. So tell us, how old was George Washington when he died?
Make sure you check your work.
Alright. Who thinks they can walk me through the last 3 steps? Who can walk me through the last 3 steps? To knob. Alright.
1,000 minus 1,000 is
Okay. And there's one more step.
the answer is 67.
And what would my label be? Years, how would we say years old? Alright, who got 67 years old? Very nice. Alright, at this time we are going to erase our slates. We have 13 minutes until our tour of the Woodcock Garrison House. So at this time we're going to take a little pause from colonial times. We are going to collect your slates and your chalk and your rags. When yours gets collected, you can go grab a quick snack. And if you need to use the bathroom before our tour, this will be a good time, all right? So we can take a pause from colonial times. If you raise your hand, we do not need to do our yes ma'am and our bows. Your materials are going to be collected, and we'll call one row at a time to go grab their snacks. No, it wasn't that chilly.
All right, so this is the keeping room. This is the main room of the house. This this is the original room of the house. This is the oldest house in North Attleboro. It was owned originally by John Woodcock. And this is the main beam. It's called a summer beam, which means a central beam. It holds the whole house up. So this house was originally owned by John Woodcock. He owned it. It was important during the original times in North Attleboro. It was originally probably with a packet of land that was built from Rehoboth, North Attleboro, Attleboro, Plainville, Mansfield. It was a big lot of land. It was called the Rehoboth Purchase. And he had a farm here, but he also bought this as a garrison, which was used as a place for soldiers to stay during the King Philip's War. So he would open this up for soldiers as well. So he used this for that as well. But as a house, it was also used as a main room for where the people would stay originally. So other rooms were added on later, but this was the main room that you had. So this is the oldest table. This table is called a gatehouse table because it has a piece on the bottom that sort of looks like a gate. And what you could do is you could move this so that you could fold this table up and put it off to the side so that if they had soldiers sleeping here, they could lay their bedrolls down and then you could put this off to the side. Now if you had a family here, this is a trencher, the food would be put in the middle. And then these are looked like forks, but they weren't used for forks. They were to stab the food, and you drop the food on the pewter plates. Now, pewter plates can't be used anymore because they had lead in them, and lead is dangerous to you. Now, the chairs were for the men because they were the most important, unfortunately, still, but fortunately, but. And so we think, huh? Yeah, so they say. But, and then the women got the stools, and then unfortunately, the kids had to stand. So they were, yeah. So the kids had to stand, and they often had, their plates were often just dry bread. So kids were kind of, you know, the poor kids back then. Yeah, so they had to do a lot of things, yeah. So they, over there, if you look, turn around a little bit and you see some shelves there, their job was to fill those shelves with water buckets, because they didn't have, obviously, we're back way in the 1700s, right? We didn't have running water. So they had to go out to the stream, which is in back, they had to fill it with water and fill that shelf all filled with water. So that's got other decorative things on there now. But back then, that would be their job. So kids had to stand, all the food was put in the middle, you would stab it with your, and of course, kids would have to wait until mom and dad were sitting, but this was the main gathering area for the family. It was the main fireplace, you would stay here, you would keep warm. So back in the colonial days, you'd probably spend most of your time here. We're gonna wait for the questions to the end, okay? Because we're kind of pressed for time because we don't have a lot of time during the day. Okay, this is called a Bible box or a keeping box. They would keep a document box and keep all your important things in here. Usually before they had documents and paper, they would put all of the people who were born and died in the Bible, and they would put it inside this box. So then they'd keep it by the door, so if there was, God forbid, a fire, you would grab this box and you would run out the door. So this was like, you have a safe box maybe in your house now, like a metal one. This is their version of that. This is a sampler, and you're going to see more samplers upstairs. Now samplers are important because girls couldn't go to school, again, poor girls couldn't go to school until the 1800s. So when you go upstairs, you'll see different kinds of samplers. So when you go up there, you look very carefully. If the sampler was done like this, just sort of plain, not too much color, kind of big stitching, that girl probably was someone who would be a farmer. So the boys didn't often even meet the girls before they got married, so then they would want someone who was a farmer. So they would look for someone's sampler and say, oh, I want to marry this girl because she would work hard on the farm. However, if the sampler was very pretty, had lots of color on it, had nice teeny stitches, had very fancy linen, then that person probably got to from a richer family. So then somebody who was a richer family would say, oh, I want to marry that girl. So when you're upstairs, they'll show you that. You look at the different samplers and see what kind of girls they would be. There are two different samplers up there, and you'll see the different kinds. So this is kind of basic, all right? So this is one that you could see that probably someone who lived on the farm, okay? And that person, the girls, also had to start a dowry box. So this is a dower box. So from the time, now remember, we live a long time now. Back then, they only lived much less. So probably about the time of your age, they would start a dower box. So they'd start making linens and blankets and baby clothes for when they had a family, and they'd start putting them all in a big box like this. So when they got married, they'd have things for the new family. So this is what it would look like. So girls would start doing that. So this is what this is for. Now this chair is a little different than chairs we see today. How's it look different?
It's because it doesn't have like much of a backing like this chair does.
Yeah, it only's got three legs. How come you think it might have 3 legs? What do you think? Why do you think maybe they have 3 legs?
Because the seat's like a triangle.
Yeah, it's like a triangle. What do you think maybe why they might have made it like a triangle? Kind of different.
It has 3 legs. And because it's a triangle, it has 3 sides. So on each side, it needs 1 leg.
It needs 1 leg, and you know what? I think this is the theory maybe, is that maybe they didn't have as much wood, So they cut short and made only 3 legs on this one, so that they could save on wood. You think maybe that's why they did that? That they maybe made a triangle. I don't know. It still looks pretty sturdy, doesn't it? Yeah. So this is a chair with only 3 legs. So let's look over here and look up at these windows here. See these windows? This is how they made windows, with the lead to hold in the glass. Now these windows have some colored in them. So what do you think about those windows? Now, there are 2 theories on these windows, that somebody made those designs on purpose, and then the other theory is that those are patches when the windows broke. So how many of you think that it was a design made on purpose? How many think they're patches when the windows broke? Yeah, me too. I think that that's probably what happened, that some of those, and the theory is that the colored glass came from medicine bottles. Now when you think today, you get medicine in particular bottles from the pharmacy, right? Back then, they made colored bottles for their medicines, because they didn't have real, sophisticated pharmacies like we do now, that they could make all the drugs the way that we do now. So they would do different colors for different drugs to keep them safe. So that's probably what happened, that some of those broke. So those are broken medicine bottles or broken bottles from other things, and they patched the windows. They make a nice pattern though as well. So if we turn this way, you can see our table, our shelf there, where they had the water. Over here is a nice big cradle. Now this cradle is big because it was for the Dagger twins. When you go upstairs, they're going to tell you about the twins, who later, after John Woodcock sold the house, he sold it to one of the other owners, was the Daggetts, and they had twins who later lived in this house, and then later did some other businesses of threads and shoelaces, and the twins grew up. But when they were little, they both had one end of this big cradle. So, and then this is a quilt, and some of you saw the quilt, and you'll see some quilts upstairs too, of handmade quilts. That they're called patchwork quilts because you put pieces together, and you'll see one upstairs that they use their old leftover scraps to put together to make a quilt, because they used everything, because they couldn't go to the store, right? So they had to make all of their own clothes and everything. So let's look over here. So on here are some other things. What do you think this was used for?
Candles.
Candles, right. So they took berries to make them colorful and to make them smell nice. They took animal fat to make the candles out of them, so that they would mix all that up, melt it up, and put them in here. And then they would put some strings in there to make the wicks, right, so they would come down, okay? So then, once they were all made, you could snip them off with these. They look like scissors, right? So they snip them, and they have the candles all made. So that's one of the things that kids would help with. And this is also a candle snuffer. When the candles were burning, you would come up and you would do this to snip off the wick at night, because you would want to save as much of the candle as you could, right? And you would want to keep the candle before you go to bed so there's no fires. You want to make sure that, so it kind of looks like scissors, but this also cuts the wick off and puts it right in there so that it doesn't get anywhere and isn't messy. Candles could be a little smelly if you had them made from the animal fat. So they did try to put like bayberry and other berries in to kind of help them. This is a cone of, what do you think that might be? What does it look like?
A horn.
It does look like that. What else do you think it might be? Any ideas? What do you think?
Animal fat.
Yeah, it does sort of look like animal fat, doesn't it? It's actually sugar. So you can't go to the store and buy sugar, right? Sugar was very expensive back then. It would come from the East Indies. So then what you would have to do is, if you had a little bit of money, you would buy some sugar, and it would come like this, wrapped in blue paper. And they would keep it wrapped up in blue paper and store it up somewhere so the mice couldn't get it, and put it inside something, and they would save it. And then they would take these scissors or something like this, and they would take a little bit off at a time, And they'd use it very sparingly, because you'd only get it once in a while, because it would be very expensive to get. And they'd save it, and it's all put together very carefully like that. So that's what they would use when they could get sugar. Otherwise, you could use, what else could you sweeten your food with that you could get out here?
Like maybe berries that we were talking about with
Yeah,
the cane.
some of the berries, like blueberries and bayberries. What else might be? What do the bees give you that are pretty sweet?
Oh.
Yeah, what?
Honey.
Honey, yeah, so honey.
Syrup.
Right, and then molasses you could get. Molasses was much cheaper than sugar, so you could get molasses in this area.
Wait, isn't getting syrup easier because you just need to find an oak tree?
And maple tree, you're right, on the right track. Maple trees, right. It's not oaks, but it's maples, and it's just about coming this time of year. I did see a tree the other day when I was driving in Cumberland with the hose in, and I saw them starting to get the maple sugar. You're right, exactly. So this area has a lot of maple trees that you could tap in to get the maple sugar, and you can make maple syrup and maple sugar. Exactly, very good. So the other thing here that they show are some corn husk dolls. Now these are a little fancier, but one of the things that the Native Americans did show the people in this area was how to make dolls out of corn husks. Now again, you'll see some toys upstairs, but one of the very basic toys that girls learned to make were, you have leftover corn husks when you grow corn, and you could make a little doll out of it. And there are instructions that you might be able to find. I do remember making those with my class when I did teach third grade, way back when. And we did try some corn husk dolls when we were doing the colonial times. It was kind of cool. It was a little hard because, you know, we don't know how to do all this stuff that the colonial boys and girls did. So that was one of the things that was the Native Americans did teach the colonial people a lot of things when they were there. Let's move this way. The cookies are, take a look, we're going to look this way at the fireplace. That's the cookies that you're going to get. You're going to need to get a cookie, and this is a really cool thing that you can move back in and out. And they're cooking the cookies on that swinging arm. So you can move it in and out depending on how hot you need to get that cooked. This is called a reflector oven, and the people in the Garrison House actually do really cook a turkey at Thanksgiving time and Christmas time. In that, you put the turkey on a spit and you turn it around. This one over here is called a Dutch oven, and you heat it up in the fire, and then you put something in there to cook. And they actually did cook some bread, some squash bread, to survive the long visits on the war. This is called a Betty lamp. And this was a lamp that was like sort of like a flashlight, so you could bring it around with you at night. You would put some animal fat in here. It's very smelly, but it was good if you had to go around the house and you wanted to see where you were going. So that it helped, so it would be very smelly though, but it would give you some light. They would store their candles up here, way up high, and in a metal container. Because of those mice we talked about. I don't know about your house, but the mice like to come in the house and chew things in my house. So they would keep the candles up here so they wouldn't eat their candles, and they keep them hidden up there. This is where they kept their pipes when they had it as a garrison. They would have pipes and they would share them with the people who would come and visit. And sometimes, if they got kind of grody, they would cut them off, and so then sometimes...
Is it kind of like a cigarette?
Yeah, well, yeah, you would put the tobacco in the pipe. So it's not a good thing, right? Yeah, so, but they would still use it. The one thing I forgot over here, what does this look like?
That's like a big version of the little spoon.
What does that look like? What might you make of that?
I have a bigger version.
What do you think? What does it look like that you might cook in the morning to have your morning toast? Does it look like the inside? Does it look like the inside of a toaster? Yeah. So that's what that is. All right. And then you would dry your herbs up here by the fire. In here, you would put coals, and you would heat this all up and make it real hot. And once it got real hot, you could throw the coals in there, and you could put like some bread in there to bake, so it'd be all warmed up. All right. We're going to look, if you look at the door, These are the things soldiers wore on their uniforms. They're called epaulets, to make it really fancy. And these were some stirrups that people wore on their boots to ride horses. We are going to walk into here. Now, this room is called the parlor. This was not on the original house, but as the house, people grew, time went on, and the house passed on to other people like Mr. Hatch, they added on some of these rooms. So this is sort of like your formal living room that you might have in your house.
Yeah.
For when you greet people and people come to see you. So come on in here, and why don't you sit right on the rug for me? Show you what it might look like. And then this is what some of the clothes might look like when people lived here. So this is your little bit of fancier room now. Let me see who's, oh yeah, powder horn. Okay, we'll look at the powder horn.
That's the bluffers.
The powder horn, what did they put in there, do you know? Yeah.
They put gunpowder.
Gunpowder, right. So when we're talking about what kind of guns they used back then, they had the rifle guns, and they would take the powder out of the horn and they'd put it into the gun, and then they'd have to shoot it. Took a lot more time than putting bullets in a gun, right? Yeah. So it was a lot more work. So this is, do you know what this is? Do you remember seeing this, or did you learn about this at all?
No.
Okay, so when you went to church on Sundays, and it was an all-day affair. All right, so you would put some coals in here before you left. And then you would have this so that you could bring it in on your ride over, and you could bring it into the church, and you could put your feet on it when it got cold, because there was no heat in the churches. So this is like a foot warmer. And this is also, you'll see these upstairs. This is a flat iron, and they would put these in the fire too. And then you could warm it up. And then you could warm your feet up, you could warm your bed up, you could keep this to warm. Also makes a very good doorstop. Yeah, so those are, and you can iron your clothes too. So it has a lot of different uses. You will see these upstairs, and there's a big one outside. It's called a sycamore tree, and it has that pattern on the, yeah, you can see it. It's a big tree. It's a very old tree. It's a very beautiful tree, so you will see that. You'll see that upstairs. Now, the pictures in here, if you look at this picture, that what they used to do is that the traveling salesmen who would come by, they would call them peddlers, would come by, and artists would come by too, and they would have a lot of pictures already painted. So they would paint 2 kids, and they'd have them all ready. And then someone would say, oh, I have a boy and a girl, could you put my kids' faces on them? So sometimes the pictures don't quite look like what they should really look like. So they're a little bit off, you know. So this was one that the family bought for this house. So these were some of the, I don't have my notes, but I do believe these are the Hatch children. And they are a little bit off. The girl kind of doesn't quite look like she fits on there. But that's how they would do it. And they probably didn't pay them in money, so the artists would probably get maybe some food from the people that they grew here, or sometimes they would trade different things that they had. But that's how they would get pictures done. So that would be the way they would do it, that the artists would already have them made. Over here is a tea table. Now tea was very different. They would take a teacup, and they would have, instead of the regular saucers you see now, they'd have this little saucer like this to put the teacup on. And what they would do is they would take the tea, they would pour it into this, and they'd drink from here. A little bit different than what we do now, but that's how they would drink their tea. Now, Israel Hatch also built a hotel. And this is a model of the hotel, and he built it next to where your little red schoolhouse is. Unfortunately, this burned down, so that's where it's not there today. But he expanded after John Woodcock lived here, so he expanded the area, and it was, if you think of where Boston is and where Providence is, North Attleboro was kind of right in the middle. So a lot of people traveled, especially during wartime too. A lot of soldiers came through. It was a thriving business, and he supposedly was the first postmaster. And supposedly George Washington came through here, Revolutionary War, lots of soldiers. So there was a lot of activity said Old Post Road, they called Route 1. So there's a lot of activity coming through North Attleboro. So it was a very popular place to stop. It was a good place between Providence and Boston to take a rest. So he built that hotel, and unfortunately, we don't have as quick fire marshals or, engines. They had to do it with buckets and everything, so that burned down. So
Why does it burn?
because somehow the fire started. I'm not sure at all. So this is, let me see if I can find, I gotta look at the pictures. John Woodcock, he supposedly was our first postmaster, and he had the garrison, and he had a lot of people stay here. He supposedly met George Washington. A lot of stories about Israel Hatch. He had, his descendants then sold it later to Macy and then to Daggett, but you'll hear about them upstairs. There are some other pictures here. This is his son who became a doctor. He had some famous sons and daughters too. That's his son who became the first doctor in North Attleboro. And then where's that other picture? Over here was Whiting. Now, if you remember some of I don't know if you remember any of the names, Whiting's Pond. Do you remember that from North Attleboro? You know where Whiting's Pond is? Yeah. So that's how some of the names that you hear these days, that you hear in North Attleboro, come from people who were here back then. So he was one of the people who Israel Hatch knew, so that's how the Whiting Pond got named. He also started some of the jewelry business that you'll hear upstairs. More about the jewelry business that was in North Attleboro. And he was one of the people who knew Israel Hatch. So this was, he was a silversmith and a jeweler, so Israel Hatch knew some of it because during the Revolutionary War, the soldiers needed buttons for their uniform. So the jewelry business started making buttons for the soldiers' uniforms. I think, and over there's a nice corner with all of the china. I think I probably have used my time, but we'll do a quick. Go ahead, quick.
How do they make glass?
How they make glass? Glass is from sand, and they spun it. Have you ever seen a glass spinner?
Yeah.
They heat it up, and then it melts, and then it becomes glass.
Oh.
There's a glass on the Cape in Sandwich. There's a glass factory. If you ever are down there, if you have a chance to go to the Cape, that's a place you can see them make glass.
Why are there dolls?
Oh, the dolls are just for you to see what the girls would have had, maybe a little bit later than now, because the 1700s would be more about the 1800s, but to show you that this is a little bit later. So to show you what the girls might have had. So they're for display. Okay. Yep.
What year did the hotel burn down?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was probably 1800s, I'm guessing, because it was a little bit later. The 1700s, the beginning, Revolutionary War, 1700s, so that was a little bit after. I think it went into, I'd have to check the dates.
Okay.
My apologies on that. I'm not great on.
It's okay.
Okay, I'm not great on dates. We'll let North TV do some fact checking for me. Okay. You have been a very nice audience, and I appreciate you coming today, and I love talking about colonial times, and you've done a great job. You look wonderful. It's your turn to go now see about the kitchen. Okay?
Say.
All right.
Thank you.
Come over to this end of the table, so we can kind of spread out.
So let's take like maybe one step back from the table so that we're not tempted to touch
Yeah,
it,
but they
okay?
can come around the back of the table.
Okay, you guys wanna come over here?
Yeah, come around.
Perfect, and then Brooklyn, just take like one or two
You
steps
guys can
back.
keep coming around, just that way, that way. Okay, good morning, boys and girls. My name is Mrs. Lee. I'm a former third grade teacher. And you all look lovely. I wouldn't recognize you, because I'm from the 20th century. And you're from way back when, right? Yeah. So this was originally a woodshed, this room here. It was remodeled into a kitchen back in the 1950s. And the refrigerator and the stove, they're from the 1950s and they still work. So we've cooked a turkey in that oven. The stove works, it's awesome. I just want to have you look at the poster that's up above the refrigerator. It's called The Three Sisters. And the never can say it, indigenous, people taught the colonists how to grow corn, beans, and squash all together. Do you know, have you heard that before? Yeah, okay, so that's a picture of what it would look like. We do have some beans and we have corn, we don't have any squash here. I'm going to talk about 4 favorite things on the table here. You'll notice that they're a lot older than the 1950s. So I have this little tool. Have a suggestion what it is? I'll take one suggestion. Yes.
Tomato smasher. Potato smasher.
That's really cool. I never heard that before. It's actually to remove seeds from raisins. Back in colonial times, the raisins were much fatter than they are now, but they were filled with bitter seeds, and Mom might want to have a raisin pie. So she would sit you girls down at a table for probably a few hours, and you'd have to dig out the seeds from the raisins. Any idea what this might be? Yes, sir.
Something to like smash.
You all have good ideas. This is actually, you ready for this? It's for donuts. They had donuts back in colonial times.
Like plain donuts?
Do they have powdered donuts?
They might have, well, I don't know. You know what? Sugar was kind of valuable, so they may not have had sugar donuts, but it was probably plain. They're probably plain.
Yeah, but they probably, at least one person made them.
Could be, could be. All right, this is another one of my favorite items. And you'll notice as I'm turning it, there are these 2 metal pieces here that are moving as I turn it. And I probably wouldn't have it this way. I'd probably have it this way. I would have it this way, and then I would have it this way. Yes?
It looks like an ice cream scooper.
Oh my gosh, if I could hug you, I would. You are the very first person to tell us what this is. Even adults don't know what this is. Awesome.
Wait,
Awesome.
That's
That's awesome.
Is that an ice cream scooper?
It's an ice cream scooper,
It looks
yeah.
like the Tin Man hat.
It does
Yeah.
kind of.
All right, and we have, this is something else. I'll show you this.
Looks like a
A
duck.
It
cow.
opens and it closes.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to call on someone. Yes, ma'am.
Is it for avocados?
No, they didn't have avocados back in the colonial times. Yes, sir.
Would it be to squeeze lemons?
I'm sorry?
Would it be to squeeze the lemons?
Oh, gosh. Class, you're smart. That's exactly what it is. It's an old-fashioned lemon squeezer. So you would put your lemon in there, give it a squish, juice would come out. All right, if you all just sort of turn a little bit over to the corner there, and you'll see there are bells hanging on the wall. Those belong to Dr. Joseph Hatch, who was the son of Israel Hatch. And you didn't go to the doctor came to you. So you would know he was coming because you would hear the bells on his sleigh. Cool, or carriage. Okay, I'm going to let you pick 3 items. Someone who hasn't raised their hand, pick something. What would you like? Just don't touch it.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah,
That's very interesting.
it is.
I don't know what that does.
Looks like it's gonna
Yeah, they're not going to know what this is. All right, so I would probably have it in a bowl, and I would be
It's a mix.
mixing something. What do you think it is?
A mixer.
Yeah, a really old-fashioned mixer. They weren't called mixers. I mean, we didn't have mixers when I was a kid. And of course, obviously, they didn't either. It's called an egg beater. So whatever you were making, mine would look a little bit modern looking. I'm just going to tell you this. This is also an egg beater.
Small egg beater.
Yeah. All right, and we need to pick one more thing. Yes, sir.
This.
Okay, I have to come over there.
Okay, so take a step back, everyone.
No, you're good. This is an awesome group of kids. This right here, right? Your mom or grandma might have some spices.
Oh.
to use for baking. And she might use, it'd be in a powder form, but this is what it looks like. That's inside that little holder. Anybody have any idea what this might be? Yes?
Salt?
No, not salt, it's a nutmeg.
It looks like
And you often use nutmegs in your baking, and you would just scrape what you needed, and then use that in your baking. Okay. Something else? Yes.
can you tell us
These are all butter molds. So you'd have cold butter after it was churned in that, and you would press it into these different molds. They're really pretty. I wish we had something like that now. I'll just show you one more.
Makes no sense.
You're good. Here's another one.
smaller?
Oh, that's pretty. They look like mooncake
Why
pressers.
can't people make more?
Okay, one more thing. Yes? That's also butter mold. All right, pick something else. Somebody hasn't shared yet. Yes, sir? What's that? That's called a pie crimper. Have you ever had help someone make a pie? And you have the pie crust, and you put the pie crust on the top, and it might be hanging over the pie plate. So you would take that, and then you have a bottom crust, and you want to pinch them together. So you go around and you call what's crimping. There's also a sharp edge on that, so if there's excess dough, it will take it right off as you crimp.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. On the wall over there, I can just tell you this is a phone. It's called a rotary dial phone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah?
my grandma has one of those at her house.
Does she have one still?
Yeah,
My
it's
grandpa
just
does.
sitting on the wall.
It worked? Does it work?
Yeah, still works.
This one does too. I mean, this one also works, but it's something you don't usually see in your homes too often anymore.
But it's not like as old as that one.
No? Well,
Yeah, I don't think it's that old.
actually, that's a pretty modern one. I
Oh.
used to have one that was black, very heavy, and it had to sit on a table. Okay, I believe, boys and girls, you're heading up to the top floor. That's the fun floor. I would like to thank you for coming here and sharing with me today. You're a wonderful group of boys and girls.
Hi, thank you. All right, my name is Mrs. Payne, and I will show you all of the different items in the third floor. Right now you are in the hallway, so I just want everyone, I'm standing here because I don't want anybody to fall down the stairs. Over here we have a spinning wheel, and there's a basket of wool. And, yep, and they will spin the wool until you get some strands. And with those strands of wool, usually little girl in the house will stand there and hold her hands out, and they will take the strands and move it until you get a skein. But then we also have, if you can turn out just a little bit, we also have an item here that is called the weasel. And everybody, there's a little girl, come on out, hon.
She's just gonna stay.
Oh, all right, that's fine. There's a weasel. So you'll take those strands of yarn, and if you go one revolution, it will make 1 yard. And at that time, it will make a popping sound. So you will have a saying that goes, pop goes the weasel. All right, did you hear that before?
That's how it,
Okay.
that's
Pop goes the weasel.
that's what.
Yep, it is. It's kind of interesting. Over here, oh, actually, this large spinning wheel, sometimes they call it a walking Jenny. And the reason for that is because it will make, when the spinning wheel is turning, it will make a vibration noise, and it kind of moves the spinning wheel. There's a smaller one in the back. And, all right, maybe if you can, I don't want you to fall, but I don't know if everybody's
Take
here.
a little
So
step
there's a
back
little one
so
here,
that Luke can come
and
in.
that one there is used to make flax yarn. Flax is actually an herb that will grow in the ground, and so it will make a different type of yarn. Yes,
Where's that tiny door?
there's nothing in there, it's just storage.
Oh,
It's just storage. That's okay. If you can turn around and look on the, now that everybody's here in the hallway, back in colonial days, not everybody went to school, so they couldn't read. And the sign is helpful, so if they're looking for the restaurant or a place to stay, they will see the sign. Oh, I have reached the Crown and Rose.
Oh.
Okay, and I am going to have everybody go into the bedroom, and I'll show you some of the items.
Just stay right here, don't go any further back. The seal.
I want this to be super slow.
it's so tiny.
This one's kind of tiny.
It's a tight squeeze, but we'll make it.
Bigger than mine.
Okay, so I know we have these very short eaves. So this bed here is actually a rope bed. Has anybody seen a rope bed before?
No.
No, you haven't?
Well, yes, because it's right now.
You have You're right.
To me, it looks comfy.
You're right. It is a rope bed, and usually you would have 2 or 3 people sleeping in the bed, not just one person.
What?
So if you have several people sleeping in the bed, so this rope's going to get really loose. So we have something here to tighten up. We'll put it in there to tighten up the rope. And then over here in the mattress. All right, so what do they use for the mattress? I think the lady of the house will use maybe some old material, some old clothes that are worn out, or they'll go out in the yard and they'll get some grass clippings or stuff from outside and put it in the mattress. But when they do that, guess what might happen? There's another, so if the bugs could get in there, so this is where the saying, sleep tight, don't let the, who knows? Oh, wow, what a smart group.
That's where it came
That's what, now, see, now you know. Aren't you glad you came today?
Yes.
Yeah, so
My
you're
sister's gonna be
learning.
so surprised.
You're learning a lot. I know, you can go back home and tell everybody that you heard how that saying came about. Okay, and then in colonial times, okay, so this house was built in '69, so we didn't have any bathrooms, right?
Oh, great.
What do they do?
They would pee in the bed.
No, they didn't. I don't think they did that. No, usually, and, I suppose in the summertime you can go outside, but yes.
They used a bucket.
They used a chamber pot, you are correct.
Would they burn it?
So they used a chamber pot, and whose job was it to clean out the chamber pot in the morning?
I think it was the children.
Oh, you got it. Have you been here before?
That was me.
No? Oh, you're right, yeah.
think any of us
Yeah.
children.
Yep, the boys, actually it was the boys' job to clean out the chamber pot. And then we also have a pitcher over there so people would wash in the bedroom too. So, but that was the boys' job. Over here on the wall, I don't know if everybody can see it, there's a mirror. I know it's not too clear. It's kind of foggy. The mirror is made with mercury. mercury is a poison. And there is another saying that back in olden times, the men, while going to a party, they would have these tall top hats.
Yes.
Tall felt, looks like a stovepipe, tall hats. But there was mercury in it, and the mercury would get into their brain. And this is where the saying, mad as a hatter. I don't know if you've heard that before. That, well, it comes from Alice in Wonderland.
Wait, it does?
Yeah.
Mad as a hatter. Yeah, well, there's a Mad Hatter.
So they die?
I don't know. I think they got sick.
They get
I think they got sick. I think they got sick. But anyway, I am going to, I know we've got a lot to talk about today. I'm going to take you into, it's called the display room, but most everybody calls it the toy room.
Or the playroom.
So,
The
yeah,
playroom.
so I will let everybody, we have, yeah, so we have a lot of things in here from all different periods of time. Like we have a doll from the 1950s, so that's not colonial time. We have a little porcelain doll. Porcelain is the face of the doll in a carriage. And the display room is to show children how, what to do when they're grown up and they're adults and they're mothers and fathers themselves. So little girls will learn how to be a mom and take care of their baby dolls. And then there's a handmade rocking horse over there. It's a toy, obviously. And over in the corner, if I can get over there. So for little, we got some blocks, but for little boys, this is a miniature saw. So little boys were taught how to help out their dads.
Oh, great.
Yep, so it's learning. It's what you're doing now. So you're learning. Okay, I'm gonna put that back. I don't want anybody to touch that. Okay. We have a dollhouse. Yeah, usually during our open house in November, we'll let kids come up here. They can play with the dollhouse. We have a stuffed pheasant on the bureau over there. That is from Asia. And then we have an owl. And an owl.
That looks
and
real.
It was. It was at one time. It's stuffed. And owls are good because they will kill all of the rodents on your property. Yep, and then there's also a wooden owl here. That came from the woodcock school. Over here we have I think it's kind of interesting. We have a leather softball. Does anybody play softball?
I'm going to.
Oh, you're going to?
My mom
Yeah.
did.
So this is a leather softball. It's kind of old.
I want to touch it so bad.
No, it's old. And over here we have a Halloween cracker. I'm not going to sound it because it's very, very loud. It's just to demonstrate that in olden times it would be a wooden cracker. So if there was ever a fire in the house, you would sound your cracker or some other alarm and have everybody get out of the house as quickly as you can. Over here, if we can kind of squeeze or maybe turn around,
So, yep.
there is a Noah's Ark.
Careful.
Now, it's a toy, but in colonial days, children could not play toys on Sunday. It was forbidden unless it had to do with stories from the Bible. So the Noah's Ark is to demonstrate that they're learning about the Bible.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yep. So, yep, kind of. Well, you're not supposed to play. And then we have some other dolls over here.
What is this for? Is it illegal?
This here All right, you probably don't, when I was a little girl, we used to have these little pieces of paper with,
Oh yes, flammable like one.
you would put it down and this would go on the ground. It was like a little cracker. It would like make a popping sound. So that's what that would do. And I think the nicest thing that I like in this room is right over there on the wall. Raise your hand if you know what's in there. Yep. It's not rock. No, it's got another name. Who else?
Gems?
Yep, go ahead.
Phones.
Nope.
Are they Sharpies?
No, let me see.
Arrowheads.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, those are arrowheads. And they were collected from this area and donated, put that beautiful display.
What are those? I'll donate mine.
Yep, and then over, under the arrowheads, we have some games that the kids would play with. Of course, like your slates, like you're using over at the schoolhouse, and there's some puzzles on the table, some blocks, and let me see.
So do you guys know what arrowheads are? I
No.
need someone to say
Oh,
what ours
all right, well, why don't we explain?
I don't know.
You know, oh, all right, well, would you like to do it? Yep.
Yeah, so
What do you
they were put on arrows
Mm-hmm.
for the bows,
Yep,
and sometimes I don't know if this is true, but I think sometimes like if there was like a big one and like they accidentally made it too big, they would like make it kind of like a spear.
yeah, you're exactly, that's the right word. They're more of a spear, or they could be like a scraping tool, and the little ones were more arrowheads for shooting with a bow and arrow. You're
Yeah.
right. Yep, very good. Thank you for the explanation. Good job. So when you grow up, maybe would you like to be a docent? We're recruiting young.
Yay!
But anyway, but it's a lot of fun. I've been doing it for about 7 years now, so. Okay, well, I thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, do you have a question?
So, you know about the army that used to come here, like the soldiers?
Oh, when we had did you come here for the 350th anniversary?
so.
Oh, we had.
Do they still come here?
No, that was a special occasion. That was the Rehoboth Minutemen. And they set up a camp here on the lawn. And we had tours in the Garrison House, in the schoolhouse, and then another tour guide took them over to the burial ground over there across the street. So, yeah, so if you ever have time and, with your mom and dad, if you want to go visit over there, you can do that. So I really thank you for your attention. I know there's a lot to cover, and you are going to go down to the second floor, and Mrs. Campbell will tell you all about all the artifacts on the second floor.
My mom's gonna tell.
Thank you.
Well, no, you're welcome. You are welcome.
Because that's all the families that lived here. 5 families lived here. Mostly the Hatches. And the Maxey family built the house to what we have today. There used to be another smaller house where the woodcut garrison really started. And then they used that as a kitchen when they built this up. Now, this land was all owned by the King of England. Okay? Before it became United States, this was all owned by the King of England. Now, the King of England, he had all these trees, and he needed big trees. So he made a law saying nobody can have a tree more than 24 inches wide.
What?
And he put marks on the trees to say these are the king's trees. Now, just in case he missed one, he made that law. Now, people would go around, and if somebody came and measured the board, and if it was more than 24 inches wide, you know what would happen? You're stealing from the king. What happens if you steal?
You want to jail?
You go to jail, or back then you could get killed. Now, we won't tell the king, but there are a few boards that are more than 24 inches wide in his house. Now, I'm a little rusty, so give me a little room here. Now, I'm going to be asking you things. And back then, when they were first making new stuff, they didn't know what to name it, right? So they would take, like, right, this tablet here thing, right? Corn book. Well, what they would do, this looked like a bread for bread, okay? But you know what they called it a paddle, you know why? Because they would hit the kids with it.
Oh.
Yeah. Back then they let you hit kids. It wasn't until 1974 that they stopped letting people hit kids.
Cool.
I remember. So, now, over here, I'm warning you now, you gotta pay attention, because you're gonna see me again in May or June at the Falls Fire Bomb Museum. And I'm gonna ask you questions, because I know you know the answer to it. So you better remember it. Right here is a clock made by Horace Tift. He was a local clockmaker, and he also had one of Israel Hatch's sons, but also George Dudley Hatch also made clocks with him. And they lived down the street in a nice, pretty round house right where St. Mary's Church is today. Now, if you turn this upside down, it helps you. But what do you think they named this clock after? What type of clock is it? No. Think of a musical instrument.
Bell.
No.
Guitar.
Not a guitar, but something like a guitar. What's close to guitar?
Banjo?
Banjo. It's a banjo clock. So, all right, everybody, banjo clock, Horace Tiff. Say it with me.
Banjo clock, Horace Tiff.
Lived in the round house, okay? I'm going to ask you that. I'm going to show you his house, and I'm going to ask you that. Now, they used, everything that they used, they had to make it last, because things were expensive and it was hard to make. So let's say you had bad eyesight. You would have a pair of glasses. One family could share a pair of glasses. Or you could have one pair of glasses your whole lifetime. Because these glasses, you'd have them like this. And then if your eyes got worse, you'd close them. So you could have it more like that. But they're short. Well, how could you use short ones when you got older? They pulled them out.
Big brain.
So you could wear the same glasses your whole lifetime. Now, these two chairs and table, this was the Hatches. Israel Hatch was born in North Attleboro. He started working for a stagecoach company. Then he bought a stagecoach, the stagecoaches. And then he bought the Woodcock Garrison House, the tavern. Then he ended up building two more taverns, one in Walpole and one in Boston. Of course, everybody that came off the boats over in Providence going to Boston would go take his stagecoaches, stop at his tavern, so he became very wealthy. In 1802, when they were putting in Route 1, they called it Turnpike Road, he paid for 50% of the highway to be put in from Providence to Boston. The thing is, you know where CVS is, to right over here? He didn't have it go the way you see it. We go now to Route 1. He had them go straight through the center of town. Because he wanted to make sure that they all came to his tavern. So they didn't put Route 1 over there until 1930s. Now, Israel Hatch had some knee buckles. You see his knee buckles? You know, they hold up your socks. Well, Israel Hatch, because he was wealthy, he had some fancy ones. And so he had some really nice fancy ones. And George Washington stopped by one day, and he had plain ones. Because George Washington made him the first postmaster. This was the first post office. And Israel George Washington said, I'll trade you the knee buckles. And Israel Hatch thought about it for a minute. He goes, you know what? I'll give you one of my fancy ones for one of your plain ones. Of course, after that, people said, hey, Mr. Hatch, you had 2 different knee buckles. He goes, yeah, but this one's George Washington's. So he was smart. Let's see, this is the 2 buckles. This one was the plain, this was George Washington's, and this was Israel Hatch's.
Why do they have a line in them?
Because it's like a pin to hold up your socks. Now, everything had to be written. If you're going to go visit somebody, let's say you want to go visit your friend, you would have to go and send a letter saying, I would like to visit you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Then you would wait for somebody, a servant or somebody to say, get a letter back, and the letter will say, I would love to see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Even though you're in the house right now, you had to wait. And then you'd come back at 2 o'clock the next day and they'd be ready to see you. So everything had to be written. They didn't have telephones, they didn't have typewriters, everything had to be written. And of course, you'd write it like this, with the inkwell, and you'd write. This desk was the Maxey family. They were the 3rd family in the ones that built this big place. This desk was in the house for a long time, and then it left, and we were lucky to get it back. But they would do all their correspondence and take care of all the mail at the desk. Now this picture is a man of Barton Draper. He didn't live in the house, but he was a major jewelry manufacturer. Now the first jewelry, there was a Frenchman, and you know where the police station is? On this street, right? Then there's the gas station, and then there's a doctor's office before the nice houses. Right where the doctor's office was a forge, a place where they could melt the jewelry, and that's where the Frenchman had his forge, and he taught some people how to put like gold on metal, and they started making jewelry, and it was the first jewelry company in the United States. Well, later on in 1863, the Draper family had a jewelry company. And this one is Barton Draper. This case is made out of horse or cowhide. You can kind of see the hair on it. And he had his initials. And he would go around showing people his jewelry and keep taking orders. Well, it got so big that you'll see at the False Fire Barn a big, huge trunk full of the jewelry that they used to do. But he started out with this small little box of jewelry. In fact, I lost my father 2 years ago, and then we're going through some of my grandmother's jewelry, and there was an O.M. Draper chain with a locket on it. So it's like, I know where that came from. Now, like I said, everything has names for stuff. This table, this was, women, they had to wear all these hot stuff, and you couldn't move, and tighter they made the corsets. You couldn't move, like if you ever seen the Pirates of the Caribbean, and Elizabeth is like, oh, this hurts. Well, women couldn't really move, so getting up to give the drinks was difficult. So this table, all you had to do is turn the table, so you didn't have to get up to serve. But it's named after, see that little box underneath?
Yes.
It's named after that little box. Now, now this one's really hard.
The little box.
What do you think the little box was called? It had to do with animals.
Capybara.
No. What do you think? What would you put an animal in? Everybody.
Animal trap.
No.
Cage.
Cage. And what type of animal would be in a tiny cage like that?
Mouse.
Nice.
No, mice they'd kill. The cats would kill them.
How about eagle?
No. A bird. A bird. It's called a bird cage table. Now, for everybody, I want everybody to look. See this over here? This sampler. That's from the Hatch family. Hannah Hatch made it. Now, this is made out of linen. All right, now this room is showing this bed. See this bed? This bed was made during the Civil War. It's named after this part right here. What does this look like?
Silver bell ball.
No, it's ball. But what kind of ball?
The glow.
No. Civil War. What kind of ball would be used in the Civil War?
A cannonball?
Cannonball. This is a cannonball bed. Now it also had these parts right here with like the epaulets that all the lieutenants and generals would have on their shoulders. But it also looks like a pineapple, which means welcome.
Yeah.
And if you look at that picture, there's a woman with a little girl. That little girl used to be like me and teach people. And she looked at the dress. She goes, "That's on my table," because that's her aunt, and the dress is right there. Now, as I said, the samplers were very important. See, girls did not get to go to school till 1848.
Yeah.
So they had to do the samplers. Now, the samplers would be for 3 reasons. One, it would teach the girls how to sew, because everything had to be sewed. You didn't have things all made up like they did back then. So they would have to practice their sewing. Also, it would help them learn their alphabet. So if they couldn't go to school, at least maybe they could learn something from their brothers, and maybe an older person, father or something, might give them the alphabet. So usually there was the alphabet and a little saying. Now there was always something wrong with the sampler, because they made it imperfect, because only God was perfect. That was their belief back then. So you had to make a mistake. Now this one is made out of burlap. Burlap would have been a more poorer family. Okay. Now I'm going to go in the next room. They didn't make these rooms too big because they wanted to keep all the heat in the wintertime. So everybody keep... Now first I want to talk about, if you can push back a little bit for a second, the 2 boys, if you could go and show them that rocking chair. Everybody see that rocking chair? See what it looks like? If you can't, come over here and see it. Okay. Once you've seen it, you can go back. Now, when they were trying to figure out what to name that rocking chair, they decided to call it a comb-back rocker. Why would they call it a comb-back rocker? Well, this is a comb, and the women would put it in their hair. And if you look at this, and you look at the back of the rocking chair, it kind of looks like the comb. So they called it a comb-back rocker. Now, if it was the winter time, you'd have these heavy curtains. They would go all the way around the bed. You would close the windows to keep all the cold air out, right?
It's dark.
Yeah, I know. But it was nighttime, so you were going to bed, so it didn't matter. So then, what you would do is then you take this, and you go to the fireplace, you get some nice hot coals, and you put it in here. And then you go back and forth over your sheets in your bed. What do you think they call this?
It's like, I don't know what they call it, but it's like to warm up the bed.
Yeah, turn it around. Those 2 words around. Not warm bed, but
Warm?
bed
Bed warmer.
warmer. And now all the bed is all nice and warm. You'd put the curtains around, and you'd stay nice and warm during the night. And you'd have till the coals went down, but you'd stay nice and warm. Now it's the summertime. Well, you don't want these. You want netting. The windows are wide open because you want the coolness. Why did they need netting? Why would they have a net here instead of a curtain?
Because it's warmer in the summer.
Right.
So you don't need like something that will keep you warmer and keep the cold air out.
Right. Now, why would you need a net around you?
For bugs, though.
Bugs. There would be mosquitoes. You don't want to get eaten by mosquitoes in the middle of the night, so you had to have the curtain around you to keep the mosquitoes out.
Why doesn't it go down farther?
It would have gone all the way around. This is just a sample. Now, See this sampler? This sampler was made by Caroline Draper. Her family was wealthy. It was made out of silk, and it's very fine, tiny stitches. To have tiny stitches, you couldn't have coarse hands. You had to have nice, soft hands. And that meant you had servants doing the work for you. Now, in the old days, what they would do, the sampler, first, you know, that it was used to help the girls to learn how to sew. Then you learned to help them to learn the alphabet and how to read and write. The other thing was to find a husband. You would put these on the wall, and what you would do, like you have a good paper, and your parents put it on the refrigerator to show off. Oh, look at or a nice pretty picture you made. They put it on the refrigerator to show it off. Well, that's what they did here. In the old days, women, if you were a poor farmer and you had a whole bunch of daughters, they cost money, and he didn't have a lot of money. So he wanted to get rid of his daughters. And he would pay people to get rid of your daughters, especially because they usually had big families. So what would happen is somebody would go and say, I'll marry your daughter, I'll give you this, and they would have a dowry. And a dowry would be like, well, I can give you the furniture, I can give you what's in the dowry chest. And some would say, I have 1,000 pounds, which was a decent amount of middle class money. So then the person would decide if they wanted to marry them. Well, what a man would do, if you were a wealthy jewelry manufacturer, and you went in and you saw that sampler in the other room, made out of the burlap, well, you would know she was poor, and so she wasn't in your class, because they like to keep the rich with the rich, the poor with the poor, and the middle class with the middle class. So a rich man would not want the girl in the other room. Maybe the one in the middle room, middle class, but he would know that this woman was from a wealthy family, will give a wealthy dowry, and will keep him in the class. So the better the stitching and the better material, the better chance of women would have a good husband. And that's what they did back then. It was really different. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. Yeah, it wasn't about love back then. It was a business deal. The farmers couldn't take care of them. They wanted a couple to help take care of the cooking and the sewing and take care of the little ones. But if you didn't get married, he would have to take care of you all your life till you died. And they thought being 23 years old, you were an old lady back then if you weren't married by 23. See, it was a really different life back then.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to show you one more thing. Back in the old days, they thought it was a place to hide from the Indians. But you wouldn't hide from the Indians because the Indians would have just burnt down the place. And you don't want to get stuck in a closet that just burned down. Then they thought, oh, it could be to check the chimney to see if there's fires, because if there's a hole in the chimney, it could start a fire and burn the whole place down. And the other option is that it could cure the meat. They would hang meat in a hot, steamy place and kind of keep it like a slow cooking, and you put salt on it, and it keeps the meat from going bad too fast, so you could eat it year-round. You put more salt on it, and you could eat it much later. And that's probably what it was for. But everybody can take a look at this, and then you can go downstairs.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, go take a look.
Go
You
take
go
a
first,
look.
Brooklyn.
See, it's just a tiny little spot.
Okay, yep. And now come out here with Miss McDonald.
Anybody have any questions? I'm the one to ask. Yep.
Why are these
Angelica, go
designed
ahead.
like feathers?
They just wanted to have a nice little design. Yep.
By the way, it's not a corn book, it's a horn book.
Wonderful.
All right, now come back out here, Angelica. Lucas, then go ahead.
And the cemetery across the street used to go a stretch across the whole thing. And then in the
Yeah, go ahead.
1870s, they took all the bodies and piled them up on top of each other and made that one small
Caleb, go ahead.
cemetery. Whoa.
Kind of cool, huh? Richie, go ahead.
Bigger ones.
So it's probably just a place to hang the meat near the heat.
Charlotte, go ahead.